going to I'm going to let Lisa and Syran into the talk. Oh, Lisa's gone now. Hopefully she'll be back in a second. So I'll let Syran in and we'll say hello.
Can you hear my voice?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. Just want to make sure, like,
Hello.
how's it going?
How I'm good. How are you? How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I feel like I think we have the same outfit on.
Oh, you have your
Oh no, no,
Dude,
that's what I was looking for. But you have a Colt Vault shirt.
I do. Where's your Cult Vault t-shirt?
I have it. I still have like a bunch of clothes that are like I just got out of the laundry, and it's in
Oh,
there because I was
Syran, that
wearing
would have
it.
been a perfect opportunity to show it off to
I know,
everybody.
I know.
I haven't shared it with everybody. So for anyone that hasn't heard, Syran was doing an amazing documentary, which we can talk about during our talk. And he asked me to narrate the documentary, and I was so excited and I was so appreciative that I got Syran his own Cult Vault t-shirt made up with a silhouette of his face on the t-shirt. So
It is
Syran
it
has
is
a Cult Vault
definitely
t-shirt.
it's one of my most prized possessions.
Doesn't it? Does it actually? It doesn't say Cult Vault. It says Cult Hunter.
It says Cold Hunter on it.
In the
Yeah.
style of my logo. That's so funny. That's great. That's my amazing graphic designer Meg. She's incredible. So we're still waiting on Lisa. I think she talks from her car typically. So I think she might have
Yeah.
dropped out. Um, and so we will get started with everything, and then hopefully Lisa can kind of come in. Hello, Siren. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. It's great to be on. I mean, this marathon stuff is really cool. I was there for the last one.
Yes, you
So
were. I remember you were dropping in
I
comments
wasn't
about
on. I was just
vegan
I
cults.
was in the mix. Yeah.
And what does it say on your hat? Desert Storm.
It's just a Desert Storm hat. I do have a bunch of like cult paraphernalia now though from the past couple years. My latest is this group. I'm working on a story about this group called Profundity Yours in Texas, and they own a restaurant. And I have one of their restaurant T-shirts that
Yeah, that
somebody
sounds
gave
like
me.
cool stuff that you'd want to collect from your own research and experiences. That's different to going on a weird website and buying things for
Yeah,
hundreds of dollars. Oh, I hear a noise. Oh, it says guest no video feed. It says no video feed. Um Oh no, there she is. Right, okay, let's bring her in. Let's bring her in before she runs away again. Ready?
hello,
Hey,
hello.
Lisa!
Hi.
Can you
I am
hear us?
so
Can you
sorry.
see us?
Yes, I can see you and hear you. I apologize. I was all ready, and then my phone was like, it's too hot. I need to turn off. So I scrambled and found a shadier spot, and here I am now. I am so sorry.
Don't apologize. We have to have technical difficulties with every single
Of
talk. Otherwise,
course.
I'll start to get a bit worried.
It's very hot in
So
Pennsylvania right now. That's why it
is
happened.
it?
Yeah.
Is that where you're talking to us from Pennsylvania?
Yes, Pennsylvania, east coast of the US. Yeah.
Amish territory, isn't
Amish
it?
country. Yes. Yes, indeed.
Mm.
They're about an hour away. So sorry about that. Hello, here I am.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to speak to both of you, because I really am excited and in admiration of your work separately. So together, it's even more exciting. I'm going to ask both of you who have been on the podcast before, Siren. Hello, welcome back to the show. Would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah, I'm Steven Warner. I'm a journalist. During the I had worked on a story that a cult had uh, sort of wound like a cult wound up in a crime story I was working on, and I got like really close to them not knowing that it was a cult or really what a cult was. And during the pandemic, I was going back through a lot of the material from that story, and I realized like, oh, these people like got in my head. And I realized, kind of what was going on in this group, and that inspired me to, I'm going to start working on stories like about this particular group and other cult stories, like to throw in there. I just started researching, and it was supposed to be like a 1 year project, and it's gone on now, and a couple of these stories that I've worked on have like sort of broke into the cultural consciousness, which has been amazing. And I've just met like a ton of cool people along the way, like you and Lisa, who like we all kind of like, I guess, started putting together our projects like at the kind of the same time.
Yeah, it does feel that way. It does feel that way, and it's an interesting mix of experiences and education, because we all seem to be kind of learning the same stuff, but in very different ways. So you are an investigative journalist who has fallen into this work, and I am a podcaster interviewing survivors, and Lisa is somebody that is going out into the world, into these groups to experience them firsthand. So it's all very, very different. I did just want to say, Syran, I can hear everything that you're saying, but it does sound a little bit like you're underwater. So I don't know if that's your microphone.
I'll try to fix that.
But I can actually hear everything you're saying. So if you can't fix it, don't worry too much.
Okay.
Hello, Lisa. Welcome back to the show.
Hello.
Please, can you introduce yourself to the listeners?
My pleasure. It's good to be here. I'm Lisa VanArsdale. I am a cult enthusiast, visitor. Some people might say that I infiltrate cults. I think that word's a little dramatic personally, but I find a cult that fascinates me, and I go and I visit them, and I attend their church services and eat with them. And if I'm able to like stay with them overnight, I do that. And I'm going to be doing a 1-woman show about that here in the US in January. And Syran and I just today launched our own podcast about that, where he talks to me as I tell him about all of those visits, called Lisa Joins a Cult. And I just checked Spotify, and it's up and it's running, and it's very exciting.
Oh, we'll have to. If Educo, are you in the chat? Can we throw it up on? Well, I mean, I'm so bad at this. Educo puts every cult podcast up on the cult podcast subreddit. So I'm sure that he's already done it.
There it is.
Oops. So I'm sure that he's quickly typing away now to put that out. That's amazing. Congratulations on that. And that's a solid collaboration. That's something you have done together. I use the word infiltrating. I do think it's dramatic, Lisa. You know how scared I get when you tell me that you're going and spending time with groups, and I wonder that you're never going to come back. And people always say, should I join this group for fun? And I say that's one of the things I would tell people to never ever do. But we seem to have somebody that is level-headed and goes not to expose the groups, but to experience them. And it's interesting, the stories you've told about recognizing that there is a show being put on for you, and realizing that if you were to stay longer, things would be very, very different, which is something I find personally fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They're on their best behavior at first, for sure.
I would say, do I sound better?
Yeah, that sounds much better.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I would just say, like, I wouldn't trust anybody to do what Lisa does but Lisa. Like, for a long time, I was like, this is insane that you do. At first, I didn't believe that it was actually, like, a real thing that she was doing. But then I would just be like, man, this is so insane that you're like, something terrible is going to... But I've realized that she knows what she's doing. She has the temperament for it. A lot of it, I mean... it has to do with just being able to talk to people and knowing what they're talking about, what you're stepping into.
Thank you.
And I wouldn't recommend anybody doing it but her for any of the listeners.
I feel
Thank
like you're
you.
kind of breaching on that territory though, Syran, but just in a very different capacity. You're accidentally going to be in the mouth of a cult very soon, I imagine.
That could happen. And they have they've showed up. There was a guy that showed up on my doorstep last summer, but there are dangers involved in
forgot
cult
about
reporting.
that.
Yeah, that's creepy. That's I don't share my last name and other kind of identifiable things too much on the podcast. So if somebody showed up on my door, I would be very, very freaked out and surprised. Although it wouldn't be that difficult, I don't think. So, can whichever person, I mean, I think Syran tells it really well from his perspective in terms of not believing the response to the listing. But could you please tell us how it was that you two came to be in contact with one another?
I'll just start it out and you can kind of finish it, I guess. But when I was building this project, I wanted to have I wanted to have other voices and people telling stories, and I was paying people $40 an article to write tell me a story about a cult, and I'll edit it or whatever, and it'll build up a backlog of things. And as you can imagine, putting Craigslist ads in New York, you get a lot of weird responses. People, there's a lot of people who make up stories, or they're telling you about something that isn't a cult, or they're into just, you get a lot of interesting folks with Craigslist. And Lisa sent me an email.
Listing itself. The listing itself is
yes. Oh yeah. I'm weirdo too. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not gonna I am a weirdo. It's a weird thing that I was doing, fishing for stories with Craigslist. But I got Lisa's email, and it was such an entertaining email. But it was I go and these are the cults that I visited. This is something I just do. I've been doing it for a long time. I have sort of pitching this story that I thought was impossible. And I sent her something that's a cool email. That's interesting, but I don't believe you. And then
you were essentially I don't think you're real. You have a very active imagination, but if you are real, I'm very lucky to have found you, or something like that. And I was no, I am real. So then I found a bunch of pictures. I don't post about this stuff very often, but I went through and was all right, here's a Rasta picture, here's an Amish picture, blah, 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 and sent them all. And then he was okay, you are real. Cool. What have you got?
That was
uncanny.
It was just it was sort of my mind was, I mean, in this world my mind has been blown a few times, but that was one of the ones that was oh, holy shit, this is a real human being sent this email.
Yeah.
And has these pictures, it's a real story.
So that kind of leads us really nicely into asking you, Lisa, what would you say? I mean, how do you have a list of most interesting or groups that you've kind of found you had a slightly more significant experience to others, or do you just kind of list them off and say these are all of the groups that I've spent time with?
Wait, I'm sorry, what's the question?
Do you have a list, not, I don't want to say a top 5, but do you have a group of groups that you've been to visit that you talk about more than others, or do you just tend to reel off names of maybe groups people have heard of?
I mean, it's definitely easier to start. It depends where you want the conversation to go. If I'm just talking about it at surface level, I'll be oh, Mormons, Moonies, Scientology, what have you, because those are all groups that for the most part people think of as a cult. I mean, maybe Mormons a little bit less nowadays, but if I want to have a conversation that goes a little deeper into what a cult could be, or what it is to be culty, because I think of cultiness on a spectrum. You can be a little bit culty, or you can be a lot of it culty. And a lot of groups will fall somewhere on that spectrum. Then I'll mention a group that you might not necessarily think of as like boom cult, like cloistered nuns or the Amish. A lot of people in the US don't think of the Amish as a cult. They just think of them as charming, simple people who live differently and make great furniture and Pennsylvania Dutch food, which they also totally are. So it depends like what the goal of the conversation is for who I'll bring up.
Oh, goodness. So, Syran, how did you approach your conversation with Lisa to begin with? Did you go through that list with Lisa, or did you just ask for moments that she's experienced in different groups?
Lisa told me some stories that like it was like I could write about this or this, and then she showed me an article that she had written about the Amish. And at first I was like, yeah, I don't know if people are gonna I had the same thing. Like people are gonna see this and they're gonna be like, that's not a cult. But I loved the piece, and as I started, I did like a little bit of research into like what was going on, that just in the history, where it came from. And I was like, oh, this is absolutely a cult story. And it totally fits in with this material. And like that story itself, like we kind of passed back and forth a couple times, just like punching up a little bit, which is not like, you don't need to do that much with Lisa's writing anyway. But like we sort of worked on that story and put it out with these pictures. And that was like, I mean, I was like, this is the coolest thing on my website. So,
Aww.
like, yeah, we just continued, and I've got, I mean, there's Machine Gun Moonies and what are the Christian Scientists
Science.
and all kinds of stories that are still from that period. And I guess, yeah, a lot of that stuff comes up on the new show on Lisa Joins a Cult. Like it's kind of like deeper dives into these stories, and there's always a discussion at the beginning about the cult. Some of these things, like I'll be able to put in, you know, whatever I know about it, and we can have an honest discussion. Some of this stuff, like I'm just learning and making comments, I guess, as I learn about something like this Father Divine or some of the stories that she's done that would be like a little more obscure to somebody like me.
I don't know. You're like the king of obscure at this point. I feel like I don't know. I feel like
no. I mean, I guess like I love to find like obscure cults that nobody's writing about. I mean, for a lot of reasons, because mostly it's like if nobody is telling a story about Profundity Yours, or nobody is telling a story about the body, like these people can just act with impunity.
Yeah.
That you need to have a dialogue. The locals need to know about it, that kind of stuff. And I love those. Like I love the story. I mean, the episode we did about Father Divine, which is one that like I didn't know. I mean, I think I in anticipation for it, I might have read his Wikipedia. So I really didn't know anything. But I love learning about these groups, because like in my reporting, you're never going to find me do some story about this little like, or this giant, let's say, evangelical operation in Missouri that is like that's doing bad stuff with their finances, even if it does qualify as a cult, because like that's like other people are, I feel like, telling stories like that. So there is like some value, I guess. Well, I mean, in hearing stories that you don't know, getting stories out there that you don't know, but also having a perspective on, like, I think like we have a Mormon episode. It might be our longest episode, and we're not.
That's going to be a long one. I've got a lot of Mormon stories.
We're not like covering new ground, but it's like a totally fresh perspective, I think, than what's out there already.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
and you keep talking about how you read the Amish piece and you were like, I can see how that is cult-like, but I'm not sure other people would be able to see if that's cult-like. So what's your understanding now, Syran, through doing this work of a cult? Because you've had a very interesting education in this field and through speaking to various people.
I go by Alexandra Steins Model. She has like, these are the 5 elements of a cult. Some of them like can be like, there's rules that may not apply to every group. Like as far as leadership goes, like in the Amish, you don't have like this one central leader. Like everything is governed in a system that it's a generational thing. Like the system got created by a cult leader who was like, sounded like a very unpleasant person, and it just like the system just like works without like one person like leading the whole thing. Or you have something like QAnon, which is a cult that is led, but there are like different leaders. There isn't like one central cult leader thing. People like pass the baton all the time. But other than that, like detail about leadership, I would say everything else in Steins model applies to every cult. And 99% of the time, like that it doesn't, the thing about leadership like isn't the defining characteristic, or there is somebody to point the like to point to. It's like, this is who's messing
feel
things
that,
up.
especially with QAnon, although I don't want to not say that word, but I feel like we have to be not saying that word now because YouTube has banned me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep saying it. QAnon is bad, everybody. I don't know if
Correct.
YouTube wants you to think that. I kind of feel like YouTube has taken the stance of protecting individuals that are affiliated with Q. I mean, I sound like a conspiracy theorist when I say that, but I feel like that's the only thing that makes sense. So, Lisa, what drew you into wanting to experience these communities, knowing that they had this pejorative label attached to them?
Well, I was raised very, very Christian. And in hindsight, there were a lot of things about my own upbringing that were very, very culty. And you don't realize that until you've grown past it, like hindsight is 2020 and all of that. And, you're young and you don't have critical thinking being cultivated. So until you grow up and you learn how to do that, you're not going to see it. But I used to be super, super religious, and I didn't wake up one morning and be like, I'm not a Christian anymore. It took years. It was like a slow fade as critical thinking built up. And I was like, oh, well, this doesn't make sense. And that doesn't really play out well in real life. And I guess the fascination would have developed somewhere in there. Like, okay, well, let's look at what these other people believe. And I was brought up to know the basics of what other groups believed, because we needed to know the difference between them and but the Bible says we're right, so I would have been pretty young when I learned well, these are Mormons, this is the differences between us and them. These are Catholics, this is the difference between us and them. This is where they're wrong according to us, so the foundation was laid pretty young to be able to know what you believe and how to defend that, and where in the Bible to find the defense for that. But I'm also just a very privileged person who's been able to travel a lot. So you study abroad in Europe and you go to all of the cathedrals and all the everything. So visiting houses of worship was just kind of always on the to-do list. Whenever you go to a big city, you find the Buddhist temple or the synagogue or the whatever. And it all just kind of built slowly, I think. And I also really, really, really love people. I love to visit with any people group, religious or not. I've been to a nudist resort just to see how that is for them. I've hung out with a motorcycle gang. I would jump on any sort of subculture opportunity that came my way, but ones that are religious or having to do with God are definitely my favorite.
So it's almost like leaving behind your high demand religious group and exploring the alternatives of that exact thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there are people growing up in those communities or those groups and having similar experiences to me, where they're also being told these are the other groups, here's what they believe, here's why they're wrong, and here's how we can prove it, you know? So like there's like a bit of like identifying with them and a bit of empathy with them, because, you know, I could have been born with the same personality and the same everything in Russia and be a very devout Russian Orthodox whoever, or I could have been born in New Delhi and I'd be a nice Hindu girl, you know, like it could happen to anyone anywhere, and you're born into it and you don't ask for it. And I think it's also just been a valuable thing. They, in evangelical circles, what they call what's happening is they're calling it deconstruction, which is what people who are Christians and want to continue being Christians are doing, as they're like looking at things and being like, well, this might be bullshit. What if we calm down about gay people? Like, what if we just calm down about it and we were loving and all of these things? And I think that's like a really invaluable thing for anyone to do in any faith, is to look at things and be like, where does this come from? Who benefits from me believing this? Who profits from me believing this? Do I actually believe this? Like, is this something that I would arrive at conclusively as an adult if I'd never seen this before? Or do I only believe this because I was brought up with it? And I don't remember what the question even was at this point.
I'm just letting you go. Everybody in the chat is John Verner says relating to Lisa's so hard right now. Erica says me too.
Hi, John Verner.
And then Paul says she's so right. So you've got some time. I imagine you're going to get some listens to Lisa Joins a Cult today from this stream, which is amazing.
Thank you.
And we can expect some more nuggets of golden insight from Lisa and Syran in those episodes. So Syran, talking of obscure cults and groups that you have worked on in the capacity of an investigative journalist, can you tell everybody what is the Body?
The Body is this cult from Alaska that showed up in my story a long time ago. It is a sort of fundamentalist Christian group, although that's almost kind of confusing to call them. Like, they're very on like the Hebrew end. There's a lot of philosophy that from the Body that was like stolen from another church that the cult leader was a deacon at. This guy, Mark Bissett, was a deacon in Texas, this place called Church and Marshall. He kind of learned, I think, over the years, like what the preacher was doing, and was like, I think I could probably make some money doing this. And started his own group, kept it small. I mean, it's a very like small group. At max, it only ever had like 30 people in it. And now they're just kind of like scattered, some, like after what happened last year. But the Body, it's a very, the system of control is as high as I've seen like in any cult. Like they're just examples of people doing things that you would never do if decisions people wouldn't make on their own. Like really hard decisions, like leaving their children, or like reporting yourself to the police because the cult leader said you committed a crime and he's really just trying to blackmail you. There's a lot of stuff in there, and it's the kind of group. I guess this is part of the stories that I generally. I like working on a lot of stories, but when I really focus on one, as I have with the Body and as I am right now with Profundity Yours, it's, I can say to somebody who knows the story, like, oh, like, this is something that Elvira did. And like, you'll know who Elvira is because there's only like 13 people in the group, like at the place, like where you can kind of get to know people and get to know their stories, the stories of the cult members, the stories of the people who left. And you can kind of do like a roster. But yeah, the Body is just, it's the story that brought me to this. It's the one that I basically was having like a breakdown and a mental breakdown when I like found out they were able to do this stuff to my head. So it was like, I'm gonna do something to I'm gonna take these people down. Like I'm gonna screw up this operation. And that's sort of the genesis of everything.
it's the genesis, and it's like you couldn't have been thrown into something that was more ripe for the investigation, in terms of the leader wanting everything recorded, and so things are coming up in court trials. You're getting a hold of recordings of the voice of the leader saying really compromising things for him, and then all of the tracing of divorces and all of those things that happened. It's like it needed the right person to pull it all together, but you were able to do that. And the documentary that you've put together, which we hope will come soon, is
it will come out
it's
this
wild.
year.
You have this other story now, though, that's taken over. So it's hard to juggle both things.
So I guess I was working on this documentary about the body, specifically about this one court case they were in, where I got all these records from it and all the audio from it, and it was like, here's this story. Like the trick of that documentary is making a video project where maybe 5 minutes of I have footage from the body, maybe a little bit more than that with their, like, when they tried to go on TikTok and stuff, but with this very, very limited video. And while I was working on that, I got this call from Canada. I was on Indoctrination, that podcast with Rachel Bernstein, and there was something she put in at the end that was like, if you got a cult story, like, send it to Syran. And I was like, oh God, like this is like the last thing I can do right now is like take on another story. But what I heard about Profundity was so compelling that it was like, if this stuff, it was sort of like the situation with meeting Lisa for the first time, where it was like, I don't know about this, somebody could be messing with me, but like, if this stuff is true, like, there is something like that is very unique about this story. And I continued to work on the body documentary, like right up, like where I sort of switched streams was that Profundity Yours was predicting the apocalypse, and there were about 10 days before the apocalypse. It was on the spring equinox in March, and I was like, should be putting out like some material about this now, like on TikTok, and see if people will respond to it. And it got a huge response. I started being in like direct communication with these people, like the survivors, on just about a daily basis. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to see this one through too. Also because, like, I think Mark Bissett in the body, that guy's more like a cockroach. Like, he might survive, like, until just hiding out somewhere. Whereas with Profundity Yours and this leader, Linda McGillis, I don't know how long she's going to like be able to withstand this. I think that tower might actually like just totally come down, like in real time.
Wow, that would be something to see. And another group that seems to have recorded so much of themselves that is, just out there for everyone. Well, I don't know if it's out there now, but it was out there for everybody to see and to really engross themselves into that. It's similar, gives me vibes to Love Has Won, in terms of you can go and watch live streams and know the names of every person inside the group and how they function and their schedule and their timetable and a load of information about them and their lives just by tuning into their,
like, reality TV.
Yeah, it's mad. It's very strange. What was your experience of first hearing about Profundity Yours, Lisa? What was the information that you were given, and what were your thoughts about that group?
Well, it all came from Syran, of course. And I think the first time I heard about them would have been at some point in like February, March. And he was like, yeah, so there's this group in Texas and the world's going to end soon. And I was like, oh, well, we'll see how that goes. And spoiler, it didn't end.
Still here. We're still here.
Yeah. But they're an interesting group. They're spinning all the hits as far as outlandish beliefs go, with Linda being Jesus, but also like being, what was it, raped by an alien, and that's when God entered her body or something,
Yeah,
Syran?
that's one the source. Well, it's an alien named Christo Sophia, which is like a deity.
That's right, yeah.
It's an alien light deity. She is. I mean, the old Linda is dead. I mean, I'm actually in the article I'm writing right now. I'm at the point where I'm describing the belief system, what the story is. What is the story that she's repeating? And it's so hard not to like crack jokes because this is like a more serious article than like the Tik Toks and stuff I've been working on. So I'm just some of it. I'm just letting the funny stuff just bleed through without people will understand. But it's a crazy.
The jokes write themselves.
Yeah, it's such a it's a very creative story. I mean, one thing about Linda that makes her different than a lot of other cult leaders is like most cults are sober affairs. Like they don't touch the stuff. There's wine sometimes. It's very rare that you have like because control. It's all about control. Like you never see like Keith Raniere like drunk or stoned or something like that because he's got to have his like control, and nobody else is allowed to be out of control either. So, but Linda is a heavy weed user. She gets really, really stoned before she makes her videos. And I think you can see like she always has a place that she starts from. And then after about like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, like she kind of runs out of whatever she had planned. And then the show goes on for 2 more hours anyway. So she's got to like fill in the details. And that's where you have like a cosmic dog named Snoopy, and how the Matrix is like a real thing that happened, the movie The Matrix.
It's a really hard thing when I say, can you tell me what the body is and can you tell me what profundity yours is, because the intricacies of the belief systems and the people in play, it makes it not always possible to just be like, here's a nice clean definition of this, and what you've just said there gives us some insight into why that is. And
yeah, I mean, I guess like
interestingly,
I guess I'll just say it's like it's difficult sometimes to like synthesize these stories just because I know what their like property records look like and their business records, and I know who they went to high school with and who they were married to, and like to create like, and I do want to talk about this before we're over, is how to organize a cult story where you have a ton of information, because a lot of people come to me with stories of their own that are like, I want something to come out about this, or I have all this material from back in the day. Like, how do you put that together so you can like tell coherent stories of your own? Because it is important to tell these stories because it helps protect the next person from joining Profundity yours or joining the body.
Yeah, and that's a really important point that you raised, because you talked about the humorous TikToks, and it's important to note that the TikToks, they may be ironic, but they are still educational in the way that you say, this is what a cult leader looks like. They use these tactics, not like this person, and then you show a clip of that person doing exactly the same as every other cult leader. So it's humorous in that way, and it's ironic, but it's educational, and it's not insensitive towards the individuals that have been kind of pulled into these environments. Especially when I was narrating parts of the documentary for The Body, I found that there were parts that were specifically like, there are children involved in this group, and it's imperative that we do what we can to make sure that the parents that can care for these children remain in custody of these children. And also, just to point out that when Doomsday came, when the date that the leader had predicted came, there's a Discord server that that you've set up, Syran, where people help you to kind of transcribe videos and things, where there were people doing welfare checks and calling the trailer park where Profundity yours is, and genuine concerns from members of the public that individuals inside that group were okay, because at one point the term trailer park Heaven's Gate was being thrown around. I can see the parallels, and I can see why the group would be given that nickname, and it has concerning connotations, but also kind of like maybe an insensitive overtone, because you would never want that to repeat itself. So it's important to note that that humor and comedy is used, with Lisa being a stand-up comedian as well, lots of tongue-in-cheek, and lots of humor, but it's done in a way that is not insensitive to the individuals in these groups. And from our talk, Lisa, that we did, you were very much observant of individuals in these groups and sensitive to their positions, especially when we talked about the 12 tribes. I felt that really came across in that discussion. I did want to ask you about your Rod of Iron Ministries experience, because I have Teddy Ho's former Unification Church member coming to chat with us today on the stream.
I saw that, and after listening to your interview with him on here, I reached out to him because he gave his email at the end, and we exchanged a few emails, and he's lovely, and I'm so glad that thanks to you we were able to connect.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that yet. Teddy's like, I think one of the first documentaries that I watched about cults had him in it. And then a couple of others that I watched did as well. So when he reached out and was like, hey, I'd love to chat, I was just like, oh my goodness, it's Teddy Hose.
Right?
So you attended the yearly event that is the big old get together and party for the Rod of Iron Ministries.
Yes, the Rod of Iron Freedom Festival, the largest open carry event in America.
So can you tell the listeners, for anyone who isn't sure, what is the Rod of Iron Ministries, who's in charge, and what is this event that you went and experienced?
Absolutely. So Rod of Iron is a biblical reference. There's talk in the Bible about a rod of iron that offends you or whatever. And this church group, which is an offshoot of the Moonies, believes that verse is referring to assault rifles. So when they read about the rod of iron in the Bible, they think that it is about guns. And their leader is Pastor Sean Moon, who is the son of Reverend Moon of like the OG Moonies. And he's got his church, Sanctuary Church, about 2 hours north-ish from me. And he's in a part of the country that is all about the right to bear arms and very afraid of that right being taken away. And his brother, who I believe is named Justin, owns, and I don't want to like steal Teddy's shine here, so I'll keep this quick, owns a massive guns and ammunition company. So it behooves them to be into guns because it keeps money in the family. And they have once a year, and it's only been happening for a few years, this massive festival, Rod of Iron Freedom Festival, on the grounds of that Tommy gun warehouse. And they had Pastor Sean out there in his crown of bullets, carrying his gold-plated assault rifle. That was a sight to see. And I should have worn them. I bought earrings with rifles on them when I was there.
From the gift shop?
Yes, they had all sorts of vendors there selling food and handicrafts, and of course, like, gun accessories and things. But yeah, with them, a gun is like bordering on a religious symbol. You could buy all sorts of jewelry with different guns on them there. Like it's not too far off from wearing a Star of David or wearing a cross at this point. That's how it looks to me anyway.
It's so many with so many different extremist values coming out in certain parts of the world right now in terms of religion and politics and the right to bear arms. It's a very precarious and dangerous mixture of things, like a veneration of like semi-automatic weapons, as well as a very, very problematic leader in an authoritarian role. So all of those things kind of like, that's not a sentence anybody ever wants to say.
It's a perfect storm, that is for sure. It is a perfect storm. They seemed to be, from what I could see, on their best behavior that day, the Moonies. Very cheery and happy to talk to the press for the most part. It wasn't a gathering only for Sanctuary Church Moonies. It was for any far right, gun fixated Tom, Dick, or Harry to show up. So not everyone there was a Mooney. So they were kind of keeping the talk of like my father, Reverend Moon, was the second coming of Christ stuff pretty quiet. Like it was acknowledged, but there were a lot of just far right evangelical Christians or gun enthusiasts present as well.
How do you think that benefits the Rod of Iron Ministries by opening up the doors to other Christian groups and religious groups?
Oh, it's an incredible PR move, because you can sort of brand it as like an interfaith thing, which it is. And I think that it is important to have like interfaith, endeavors in the world. Like, hey, we can, both help the homeless, even though we believe different things. So it can be branded as an interfaith thing, which Christians are not great at doing. But it also is just like, well, if like believing that Reverend Moon is Jesus is a deal breaker for you, we've also got the gun thing going for us. So you could just jump on board for that and leave Reverend Moon out of it. And it was working. There were Proud Boys there, if you know what they are over in your part of the world. There were just so many people, there.
So many of the coolest people.
Yeah, the coolest. Like with a double thumbs up, not just a thumb, but a double thumbs up. The coolest.
One thing like from this that I thought was really interesting, like Lisa says she has like the gun earrings, but she also showed me like there's pictures of there's a woman who makes these like rod of iron like chocolates, like you like
yes!
sort of like for Valentine's Day or something like that.
Cindy's gun sweets for the win. Chocolate shaped like guns.
And they really are cashing in on all of it, aren't they?
They really are. I've also got a thermos shaped like a bullet that I bought at a Moonies church service. They've got all the goods. They had like an art show happening where people had submitted pictures of stuff that they had taken. There was something for everyone at this event.
And Sean Moon wears a crown of bullets, and Lisa has a crown of bullets. And if you want to know how Lisa obtained her crown of bullets, you can either go back and listen to our episode, or Lisa joins
mine isn't bullets. Only from what I saw another guy with a bullet crown, but I do have a Mooney crown, like an official made by a member of the church Mooney crown. But mine isn't bullets though. Mine's way prettier than Pastor Sean's, frankly. My crown is fit for a princess. It's the best.
Heresy. How dare you? And I recently found out from Elgin Straight's Falling Out podcast that Sean Moon is into making rap videos now.
What?
And they are awful.
I have to go back.
This is really some of my favorite stuff, though. I need to see that because there's nothing more that interests me more than like the art and that cults make, just because of like, I mean, the music that cults make, because like pretty much every cult has music.
Absolutely.
In some capacity, like the more
people
you sort
come
of
together and feel alive.
But also,
for a lot of
the
reasons.
leader that their music is not good. With the Source family, with James Edward Baker, he like had a load of people come and live in the mansion, and they were musicians, and they would make great music, and he would insert himself into the band, and they all hated it, and they just had to go along with it. It was awful. It was like It's like in that episode of The Office where they're trying to make music, and you can imagine if Michael Scott was like, "I'll be the lead
Yes.
singer." I imagine it's like that. You can't really say no, but sorry, that's a pop culture reference, and I try not to make too many of those. But so Syran, please, can you tell us, how is it that if you were going to go into a brand new investigation tomorrow, how would you do things typically?
Well, I would say like what's really changed in the past for me in the past, just this year really, like in January is when I really started getting into this stuff, is using advanced AI tools to like in all kinds of different formats. And then the number one way for me is like transcription and data categorizing. And so any cult story I start now, and I've talked to some people, like I have a pretty good idea of like what the next story I'm going to do is. I mean, who knows like when I'll get to that. But there's this process of telling the people, the survivors, collect data, anything, like whatever material, text messages, emails, voicemails, anything that you have, pictures, photographs, screenshots, like they're anything, like, because like we've entered a world now where the thing I guess I would say most, like there's a few things that I would use, but the one that I would recommend to everyone who wants to document a cult story, wants to catalog the stories of like other people that they know they're a survivor and they know other survivors and they want to catalog that stuff. Google has a new AI program. Well, it's not even that new, but it becomes more advanced as time moves on. And it's called Pinpoint, Google Pinpoint. And it's a tool specifically designed for journalists with the idea that you can throw any kind of media at it and it will take that and turn it into searchable texts, even a photograph. It sort of reads what the information is, and then you can search. Like I with this story, Profundity Yours, that I'm working on right now, like there's so much material because they made 1,000 hours of videos. So it's getting all that information in there, and then I can see like, hey, when do we when does Linda say like it's time to let go of your relationships with your family and stuff like that? I can just type that in, give it a command, and it'll come back like, here's like time she said this phrase or a phrase like it. Which it speeds up the like I can't even explain how much that helps you tell a story. So yeah, I mean, and I'll never not. There would be no purpose at this point to not use a tool like that to tell a story, especially a story that's a big story. And every cult story is a big story. It's just like how much of the data was collected.
It makes me think of when I spoke to Adam Dudding from Stuff Podcasts about their series The Commune that they put together about Bert Potter's Centrepoint. And in the conversation with Adam, he talked about how they collected like decades of archives, videotapes, magazines, propaganda, because the woman, Barry Leslie, who they went to spend time with, she was the Centrepoint's magazine curator. So she would put the magazine out every week or month and she would publish it. And she had every copy of every magazine that she'd ever put out, but also recordings of sessions with Bert Potter and therapy sessions that went on at Centrepoint. And they collected all of this stuff. And I had to say to Adam, I said, how did you put it together? And he just said it took hundreds of hours of sifting through things manually and also transcribing things because they were all on old-fashioned tapes and stuff. So I don't know how AI could help you with that, but it kind of reminds me of how projects have been put together in the past and how we can streamline them potentially today with everything that you've just said.
It just the process just moves a lot faster, and there's some things that are just like so daunting, like normally you would just avoid them. Like if say you were going to do a story about like Children of God, like this is a cult that's been around forever. It's like the Family International now. It's rebranded, but they've always like made, I guess not so much anymore, but like made a lot of their own material. And some of that stuff, it's like, are you really going to take all the like you're going to go through all these pamphlets from like every week of service from however long? But you can, if you can get a digital copy of it, you can just like throw it all in there, and you can search everything instantly by like what it is, or if you label it like, hey, I just want to look through the pamphlets for like this specific set of, like, this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So you can take these stories. I mean, I think this will apply to like all areas of journalism, but there's so many cult stories that I feel like we sort of only know sort of the tip of the iceberg that could be, that you could tell and also tell a story in real time, which is like with TikTok. Like that's something that I do. You know, that's this new technology that I never had any interest in whatsoever until it's like somebody basically forced me into it. But it is a way that, like,
someone forced you into making a viral TikTok account. Oh no!
No. I mean, I'm 38. Like I'm not like the generally a person. Like I don't do a whole lot of like.
I'm not a person at 38.
No, I'm practically. I got one foot in the grave, but So I would say like getting on TikTok, like now the thing is, like something crazy happens in a cult story. It's like, I'm going to write some stuff down on a piece of paper, put it in my pocket, walk around outside, put some video in here. And like all of a sudden there's this like, here's what's happening right now. And it just happened a couple hours ago.
Yeah.
And there's an audience there.
That's wild. There certainly is. And Syran's TikTok is doing really well, so people should head over. As I said, on the cultvaultpodcast.com website, I did put bios and links to everybody's work and all of that stuff, so you can go and check that out. So we're going to round up. We've got a few minutes left. Lisa, can you talk to us about Lisa Joins a Cult, and do you have like an order of episodes, or what can we expect to hear in episode 1?
Yeah, so there's only one episode up so far. We have a really wonderful editor that we're working with, and he's been an absolute champ. But that's as far as we are. We kind of scrambled to get one out to be able to talk about it today, so that there's something for people to click on. But there will be more in the future. We talked about what, like 7 or 8 different groups, Syran, already, probably.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about a lot of. I guess there's. I don't know how many episodes there are exactly.
Heaven knows how many episodes it'll turn into, but we talked about like probably 6, 7, 8 groups in hopes of them being individual episodes. They'll probably stretch into more, but the first episode that's up is like a Moonies part 1, and then we'll get the second one out sooner than later, hopefully, and there'll be more, and yeah. It'll be really good, but we talk about a bunch of different groups, some of them blatantly culty, others a little less blatantly culty that you might not necessarily think about. But I'm really excited for it to be out in the world. It kind of happened because I've got this one-woman show that I'm going to be doing live over here, and I was lamenting because I didn't have enough time to talk about all of the groups, or like, and it was just really difficult to sift through and decide which components of these groups am I going to talk about. Like I was just so lost in a sea of material, and I had said to Syran, well, maybe if I do like a podcast, it would make me feel good, like nobody got left out, even if they didn't make it into the show, like they're still being acknowledged, and B, it would help me sift through my thoughts. So even if like this part of a group doesn't get discussed, at least it went somewhere, you know. And Syran jumped on that, and we recorded it a few months ago. And then this wonderful guy, Nick, reached out to Syran and was like, you're doing amazing things. I want to work with you. Can I help you make a podcast? And Syran was like, funny you mention it. Here it is.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. It's like 2 very different paths have crossed, and now you've got a project together, which is just awesome. I am personally excited to listen to the episode. I didn't know that it was going to be out today, and it is. So
Yes.
that is Lisa Joins a Cult. Juco's put the link in the chat, so you can find that here. I'll also
Thank
add it to the
you.
website so people can go and find it. And that brings us to the end of our talk today. I didn't know if either of you had anything you wanted to add before we say goodbye.
I would just say, like, collaborate with your cult friends. Like, it's a lot of
Yes.
fun, and the more people that like work together, you can just do way more interesting stuff working with people. And it's been a pleasure to get to know both of you, and it's been a pleasure. It's a pleasure to work on Lisa Joins a Cult, and it's fun. Like, it's a lighter thing that we do about a serious topic to hopefully make it a little more comfortable to talk about this stuff. But it's fabulous to be on, and I hope you raise a bunch of money and YouTube their bunch of chunks.
Yeah,
Yes.
YouTube. What's going on, YouTube? What's going on?
YouTube's lost for sure.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Syran. Thank you for that. Lisa, did you have any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Be curious and brave and get to know other people and try to have empathy for what they believe.
Yeah, very, very nice. Very nice to sound off on. I appreciate that. And I appreciate both of you. Thank you so, so much. I'll catch up with both of you in the week and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, 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 bye,
You
bye.
too. Bye.
Thank you, Syran and Lisa. That was awesome. I really enjoyed that. My cheeks hurt from smiling.